I'm Richard Adams, State Representative for District 80, bringing you the State House report. It's been a busy time in Columbus as attempts are being made to get everything done that needs to be done and still be able then to adjourn for the summer recess to be coming back then late summer, early fall. Now, we'll still have some committees meeting, but I would not anticipate we'll have any floor votes on the floor of the Ohio House of Representatives. Let's start by talking about something that is good. I was approached by the Bradford Railroad Museum Board as well as the board of the village of Gettysburg, which is over in that part of Darke County that I represent. And they needed some capital funds so that in the case of Gettysburg, they would be able to have architectural and engineering advice on how best to utilize the school building there in Gettysburg, which they now own and which is under the control of a private not-for-profit board. They had a lot of ideas, but they needed some help to get it started. Their request was $75,000. Over at Bradford, the Railroad Museum, they also had some, really they had the architectural drawings. They have a great idea about what they want to do to expand and improve the Railroad Museum, and they needed $275,000. Now, in both cases, there will be private money that will be leveraged along with the state money, and the whole purpose in both cases would be to create some jobs and also to create some things that would be useful. In the case of Bradford, they've done some wonderful things with the museum there, the Railroad Museum, and a lot of people are still interested in railroads, and we would anticipate that there would be a lot of interest and we would have some tourism increase in the Bradford area, basically those individuals that want to see the Railroad Museum. Over in Gettysburg, this is just the beginning of a really worthwhile, great project. We were able to write the bill, get these two requests included in it, and then watch it carefully while it progressed through the House, and it was voted out of the House. And then I started to keep an eye on it and try to guard it through the Senate, and recently the Senate passed the capital bill. Now, the Senate made some changes in the House version. Consequently, it goes to a conference committee. So now I'm in the process of monitoring carefully the conference committee as they work on this so that we don't have the amounts decreased or even worse, have the projects defunded. Then, of course, it'll go to the governor, and we'll also keep an eye on it there and give the governor a reason to support both of those projects. He does have a line item veto, and so he could still veto either one of those or both of those projects. So we don't have it done, but we were making good progress, and I'm delighted that those two communities are going to be able to get some state money to leverage with private money, and the result is going to be some things that are good not only for those communities but for our entire region, and in some cases even good for the state. We also had some more good news more recently, and that is the unemployment rate in the state of Ohio has decreased to 5.7%. It was 6.1. It's been coming down for the last couple of years. 5.7 is still too high because I believe that we have some individuals who aren't in the labor market, but they still don't have a job. Maybe they've given up, maybe they're taking some more training. So we need to continue to work on that. Plus, we have a lot of people who have taken jobs, maybe not the job they want, but it's a job. And so they've taken that job, and we need to continue to grow the economy so that we have more and more really good jobs for people who have the training and the education. It's interesting to me. I was down at Hobart Brothers for the Hobart Institute of Welding Technology, dedication of an additional building so they can increase the number of people who want preparation as welders. They were indicating that when people graduate from their program, and it is a comprehensive program, very comprehensive, but when they graduate, they're going to make somewhere around $18, maybe a few more, or a few more than that, but the average is about $18 an hour. Then I read where in, I think it's New York, maybe it's San Francisco, it's one coast or the other, maybe both of them, they're threatening to boycott. These are the employees. They're going to boycott one of our fast food chains. You'd recognize the name if I shared it. It's a good one, and everybody has one or more restaurants owned by that particular company. But they were going to boycott it unless the minimum wage was increased. I think it was $15.50 an hour. Now, I don't want to be critical of the fast food industry. I know we have, Sandy, my wife, and I have 3 kids, and they all worked at one of these fast food restaurants. Great experience, highly organized. But there was OJT, the on-the-job training. They really didn't have much in the way of skills other than they would show up to work on time and do their best. But $15.50 an hour when a welder is going to start at $18 an hour? What's wrong with that? It's puzzling to me, and it may be puzzling to you, and you can have your own opinion. But let's get back to the decrease in unemployment. Granted, it's not been perfect. As long as we have people who are looking for a job or a better job, we have more work to do. But still, going down to 5.7%, it's encouraging, and I think it also strengthens our resolve in government to work with the private sector and making sure that we have good jobs available for Ohioans. We have some news that may not be so good. We anticipate before very long the federal EPA will issue more EPA regulations. I know what some of you are thinking. That's all we need is more regulations from EPA. Well, you know, there's a tendency once the businesses and individuals have accomplished what the old standards were, to have standards that are even more descriptive. And, you know, my wife, she doesn't like so much those circular bulbs. She likes the old-fashioned bulbs. But they're energy efficient. The government said you're not going to make any more of those incandescent bulbs. You've got to make all of these bulbs that are, I guess, fluorescent in nature. Well, you know, it's just how much government do we really want from Washington, D.C., I guess is the question. But in any event, getting back to these new standards, we don't know what they are for sure. However, we have heard that they're going to be very, very punitive and expensive for employers and even for citizens. There seems to be this notion in Washington, D.C. that what we need to do is put the coal mines out of business and also force the electricity generating plants to generate the electricity some other way, even though probably 70% of our electricity now is generated by utilizing coal. And this is all, of course, to do with the carbon footprint and you know, getting rid of the bad air. I don't know that we've got any bad air in Miami County or Darke County or over here, but that's the premise on which this is based. But you know, here's the thing that's irritating. Coal companies recognize, you know, they've got a lot of people may not realize it, but we've got a lot of people who work in the coal industry right here in Ohio. And what they're in the process of doing is taking this coal mined here in Ohio on up to Canada. Then they ship it from Canada on over to the West Coast. Then they put it in a boat and they send it over to China, and China uses it. You know, I've been to China. At first I thought, another foggy day. But in actuality, it wasn't fog, it was smog. They have lots and lots of coal that they burn over there. No governmental regulations whatsoever. And it's not the kind of coal we have here in Ohio. It tends to be a high sulfur content. So, if you or friends or somebody that's been to China, that's one of the first things you notice. Well, getting back to EPA again, once we know what, and I talked to some employers recently, and they said, we put into practice, we spend the money, we put into practice whatever we need to do, because employers are not polluters. They understand that it's important to protect the environment, but they put in these new, somewhat expensive practices, and then they move the goalposts. You no longer meet the standards. So now you've got to do more in order to be compliant. We need, I think, to be reasonable. At the same time, there's no doubt about it, God has given us a wonderful, wonderful place to live, and we need to take good care of it. But we also need to do so in a sensible way, realizing that we're just a small part of this world, and there's some other places that also need to take their action to do their share in making sure we don't have more air pollution or water pollution. So we'll probably hear more about that, and I'll be glad to give you an overview once we find out what Ohio needs to do. We had an interesting bill recently. Some of you probably have heard the Brent Spence Bridge. It's down in Cincinnati. Named it after an elected official down there. Anyway, if you've been over it, it's a crowded bridge, used a lot. It connects Cincinnati to Covington, Kentucky. And I think actually Kentucky may own the bridge or part of the right-of-way, because I think the Ohio River is actually in Kentucky. But here's the thing. It's just as important to Ohio and Cincinnati that we have a safe bridge that will accommodate the increased traffic. And if you've been down there, and if you listen to all the tales of, well, the bridge is not safe and someday it's going to fall into the river, it kind of makes you anxious as you drive across the bridge into Kentucky. But what we did in the legislature was to give them a tool to use if they want to use it. They may not want to use it. They don't have to use it. It's the kind of legislation I like. Give the tool to the local community to use if they want to, and if they don't want to and they've got a better idea, so be it, amen. Well, this tool that we're giving them is the ability to electronically toll. Electronically toll. Well, I didn't know much about that either until I studied it before I voted. Here's the thing that it would do. You could buy a transponder or something of that sort where you could have it in your car or your truck, and you would then trigger some electronic device and you could go right on across the bridge, wouldn't have to stop, and then you would get a bill for whatever the toll might be. I think some of the communities down in Florida have something like that where they're gated, and you put this little thing on your side of your car and it senses that and opens the gate and you can get in and out. It's that kind of a thing, only in this case there would be a kind of a running invoice, and then once a month you'd get a invoice and say send X number of dollars. The other thing it would do would be, instead of having toll booths, now if you've been down that way, you know that it's not going to be easy to put a new bridge in there, and there's not much room, especially on the Ohio side, where you could have the usual toll booths where people stop, throw money in the basket. There's just not enough room there. And so this would be, this electronic tolling would be that they would take a picture of your license plate, and you can run right on through, and then you get a bill once a month for, if you go over there going down to Florida or see your relatives in Kentucky or wherever, you go back and forth. You may not go back and forth very much, but when you do, you're going to pay the toll, and you won't have to stop, won't even have to really slow down. You'll just need to open the mail, and there's the bill, and you send them a check, and and you're in good shape. Now, what you say, well, what about these people from Michigan? You know, they're going to go right on through, and what makes you think they're going to pay? Well, there's a part of this bill that would put a freeze on your automobile registration. And so the next time you go to get your license plate fee to pay it, why, you're going to have problems. Well, you may be thinking, yeah, but they're up in Michigan. What makes you think they'll cooperate? We have a reciprocal agreement between Ohio and Michigan and a lot of these other states, which means that Michigan will help enforce it. So you may be thinking, you know, this sounds like a pain in the neck, but at the same time, if that bridge drops into the Ohio River, we'll wish that we had done something about it. It's very expensive. They're talking $2 billion, maybe more dollars. That's a lot of money for a bridge. And consequently, they may not be able to do it if they don't have some kind of creative way of paying for it. So this is a tool. They do not need to do it if they don't want to. But it is a tool that some think will enable that project to be taken care of. We had another interesting bill recently, and I had supporters and people that I know who were for it, and I had people I know and supporters who were against it. It was a bill to stop for 2 years increasing the energy saving and efficiency mandates. Now, this was adopted, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. It, from what I've been told, I was not over there then, but from what I've been told, they worked on it all day and all night trying to get it done. Finally, at 1:30 in the morning, they voted it out. And I've talked to a number of legislators who were there then, and they said of all the bills they had voted on, this bill is the one that causes them the most grief, that they wish that they had worked on a little longer and made it a better bill. What it basically does is each year it increases in 4 areas the efficiency requirements, focusing on renewable energy as well as the utilization of coal, natural gas, and those sources. It also has some things that it does with the generation of electricity. It also has some things about transparency. So when you get your electric bill from the utility company, why, it has on there a breakdown of the costs in some detail, so you know exactly where your money's going. Now, one thing I want to say to the folks who are in Pioneer Rural Electric Co-op territory, doesn't affect you, doesn't affect Pioneer. And for those of you who buy their electricity from a municipal distribution plant, PIC was a good example, doesn't affect you either. You're not affected. But for everybody else, you're affected by this. And so what the idea is, for 2 years, we're not going to continue every year increasing these energy efficiency mandates. During that 2-year period, it's going to give the legislature an opportunity, and there'll be a 12-member committee that will have the responsibility for conducting hearings and coming up with improvements in that bill. 2-year time. Then the idea would be that we would have a better bill, better than the one that passed out at 1:30 in the morning 7, 8 years ago. So we'll see what happens. It has been through the Senate, been through the House now, and like I said, there's some people for it and some people against it. It's probably best described as a compromise which will give us more time to improve the situation. And then we'll see what happens. At the end of the 2 years, if we can't come up with a better plan in the legislature, then the original old plan going back 6, 7 years ago, it will restart then and continue on. We'll probably talk more about this one because I imagine over the summer it'll become more and more interested. Saw a survey recently. It's interesting. Thought you might be interested too. This is conducted in Ohio, and they ask what should be the top priority in Ohio for Ohio elected officials. 38% said job creation and the economy. See, we're still there. We're not finished yet. We can't be finished. 18 said we ought to improve public education. 12.5% said we need to reduce government spending. I imagine a lot of you agree with that. 12% say we have a combination of priorities. We just can't come up with the most important one. 6% said let's lower taxes. Hard to argue on that one. And we had about 3.8% who said we need to do more to protect the environment. And then we had a related question, and 49% said Ohio's income taxes are too high. Now they've come down, what, 2 or 3 times recently, and they're going to come down one more time. I'll talk about that a little bit later. 44% said that the taxes are relatively fair, and 3.6% said no, income tax is way too low. So we have about 72% who favor efforts to reduce the income tax, and about 19.6% are opposed to reducing the income tax. I think you can count on the income tax for individuals to continue to go down. Why? We're in competition with some other states to bring employers here, to keep citizens here. I talk to a lot of people who go down to Florida for 6 months and a day. Why 6 months and a day? Because then officially they're Floridians. They're Florida residents. They don't have any income tax in Florida. So they save, they come back to Ohio for, 5 months and 30 days or 29 days, but they pay no income tax. Now there's some other things about Florida we may not like, but for some people it makes a difference. And if you're talking about New York, where the income tax is one of the highest in the United States, there are people who can save a lot of money being in Florida 6 months and 1 day. Well, we'll talk about the income tax again because let me jump ahead and say to you that our economy in Ohio is getting better, and the income from taxes is increasing, even above our estimates. It wasn't always true. January, February, March even, there was some concern, but toward when we got into April, that income was starting to get better. Why? More people had jobs. And it's continued. So we anticipate that by the end of the fiscal year, we're going to see a surplus. Now that surplus does not belong to government, even though government has had a big effect on trying to be as economical as possible. But the money still doesn't belong to government. That was given by taxpayers for the purpose of running government. And if we can run government more efficiently, more economically, isn't that what you expect? Sure. So as a result, this money that's left over, first of all, we want to make sure that our emergency fund, some people call it the rainy day fund, which, almost 3.5 years ago, had 89 cents in it. We need to get that up to the amount provided by law. Then we need to take care of some loans the state has, and for the purpose then of avoiding paying interest on those loans. And then the next high priority item is to lower the income tax again. Ohioans can keep more of their money. Frankly, it's your money. You can spend it the way you want to. We only need enough money to operate state government. We don't need any more to start any more ideas of what we can do. I think we're doing fine. I don't get any constituents coming to me and saying we need a few more laws here about new programs at the state to help us. No, Now, there may be some people like that in the big cities, but here in Miami and Darke County, I think it's a matter, we're getting along fine. We'll pay our taxes, but we don't need any more help from the government. We can take care of it. We can take care of it ourselves. Let's talk about another tax, cigarette tax. How you feel about that? Well, we had a survey. 63% of the Ohioans said we need to increase the cigarette tax $1 a pack. Now, if you don't smoke, you're probably not affected by that, but if you do smoke, you know, $1 a pack, that's a rather healthy increase. And furthermore, they want, these same citizens want that money devoted, spent on tobacco prevention programs. I think about 21% of Ohioans smoke cigarettes. Well, I may be like some of you. There was a time when I smoked cigarettes, but I quit. It was a long time ago. But I also know that a lot of people enjoy smoking cigarettes. You can make up your own mind. You don't need any help from me. Is it a good idea? 67% said that they would also like to tax other tobacco products the same rate as cigarettes. What are they talking about? Cigars, pipe tobacco. Some people roll their own. They want to tax it. And we have these e-cigarettes. Have you seen them? Electronic cigarettes, where supposedly you puff on those and it's water vapor, but in the water we have nicotine. I don't know what else, but I know there's nicotine in there. And so supposedly this is like smoking a cigarette, but without the odor and without some of the negative consequences. Well, people of Ohio say, let's tax those too. You have to have your own opinion. 69% favored the state spending $50 million a year on prevention programs. And that's about the level we were spending a few years ago when we started, before I got there, more taxes on cigarettes. But unfortunately, 4 years ago, we couldn't do much about it because it was done by executive order, and the Tobacco Prevention Foundation was liquidated. Money was spent trying to balance the budget. So that's of interest to me. How do you feel about it? Want to raise them $1 a pack? You can contact our office and just give us a yes or no. Recently, and you may have seen this in the paper, I was honored to have a ceremony we hosted to rename a portion of State Route 55 between Troy and Casstown for Private First Class Jeffrey Rice. Young man, went to the Army, was in the engineering battalion, volunteered. His job? Defuse these bombs planted by these cowards. I know we call them terrorists. I call them cowards. Unfortunately, we'll never know exactly what happened, but he was working on a bomb that exploded, and he gave his life. He was 24 years old. Memorial Day, we thanked our veterans and those who serve. We shouldn't just do that one day a week, one day a year. We should do it every day. Thank a veteran for what they've done to make sure that we can continue to enjoy freedom in this state and in this country. And anymore, it seems like we stand for freedom throughout the world. It's certainly a major task, and we need to honor our fellow Americans who volunteer to do those things that need to be done to make sure that America can always be the land of the free. That pretty well wraps up our State House report today. Enjoyed bringing this information to you. Hope you're having a great summer. I'm Richard Adams, your state representative.